decided to fit a fire extinguisher to the passenger seat on my Porsche, and I thought I'd just make a video about it just to help others if they wanted to do the same thing. So the thing is about the original fire extinguisher, it is no longer available from Porsche, but the bracket that you need to fit it, which is this here, that is available. So I've bought that, and it also comes with, well, you have to order them extra, but you can still get the fittings for it, all the screws and all the fittings that you need to fit it to the base of the seat. So I've got those, which are these part numbers here. This is an M5, I've actually written it there, M5 by 10, because actually you need 3 of these and Porsche only gave me 2. So I went and bought another one at the DIY store, and then this is also an M5, but it's a bit longer, so an M5 by 15 maybe. So I will take all this out of the packaging and then start to put it together just to show you. I've bought a pretty cheap and compact fire extinguisher. This only actually cost me 15 euros, which pretty good. And the holder itself is plastic, so I've got to carry out some modification to this in order for it to fit onto this bracket here. I've actually already pushed this forward or down. This little catch here is usually pushed up a little bit, but what I want to do is, by pushing that down, I want to get a Dremel or something and cut away some of the plastic at the back so that actually fits flush onto there. So, I mean, the alternative is, of course, I could take the Dremel and cut that tab off, but because this is an original part, and who knows, at some point I might actually get hold of an original fire extinguisher, I'll leave that on there and sacrifice the cheap part, which is this piece of plastic here. I also bought 3 additional nuts and bolts here, which are slightly smaller in diameter. I think they are M4, they are. Because I read on the internet that the fittings in the chair to accept this, they're unthreaded. So I thought rather than having to thread those holes in the chair, I thought I'd just buy some smaller ones with some captive nuts at the back, or self-locking nuts for the back, just to make it easier for myself if it comes to that. But what I did realise on these smaller bolts, I don't know if you can focus on that, come on. They are slightly tapered towards the end, which means they could well be self-tapping. So I will try and self-tap the hole in the chair, but if that goes drastically wrong, then I have a backup plan here with the smaller nuts and bolts. So this is how it all goes together. The 3 M5 by 10s in those 3 holes there, and the captive nuts slide onto the bracket there, and you use these little washers with these, I think they're Allen key, yeah, little Allen key, whatever they are, M5 by 15. Okay, so I've just done some modifications to this. Basically I've used the Dremel and cut a section out of the back of that bracket so that it sort of, so that it fits with that profile there. Bit difficult to show you with one hand, but I also made those holes bigger just so I can countersink these these small fixing bolts here, because they've got quite big heads. I don't know why it's not focusing. Okay, so yeah, that fits on there like that. So that will go under the seat. Oh, go under the seat is a bit difficult to hold it all together. And yeah, that center hole there is actually, I think, without looking at it on the car, looking at it on the diagrams, it's in the center of the seat. So that's why I've put that a little bit off center, because in total this fire extinguisher is it's 30 centimeters. So yeah, that's about half. Yeah, 15 centimeters is obviously in the middle, so that's why I've offset it like that. So these are the 2 parts fitted together. They actually fit quite nicely. I mean, there's a little bit of a bow there, but I'm not too worried about that. It just means the more of the plastic bracket for the fire extinguisher I take off just makes that bracket itself a bit weaker, so I'm just going to leave that on there, and it won't show under the seat anyway. So that is, I've countersunk those nuts there, or those bolts there, so they don't snag on the side of the fire extinguisher. So this is the fire extinguisher, obviously in the bracket, and it's actually quite a neat little setup, really. So I hope it's going to fit in the car, because I really haven't been to the car to see if that that setup fits. But given the width of the seat and that is in the centre of the seat, I'm not too worried about it. So it is a very, very tight to get into here. The way Porsche intended to fit this extinguisher, I think, is by taking the seat base out, because that is the only way you can actually get to the top of the 3 screws. So they aren't threaded. The screw holes on the seat base are not threaded, hence these smaller screws being self-tapping. But again, to be able to get to those screws from the top, you need to take off the seat base. So I didn't really want to do that, so I did use the smaller M4 by 10 screws or bolts, if you can call M4s bolts at all. They're very, very small. And I went in through the top with by using a very small Allen key. As you can see here, the distance between the leather and this bracket is very tight, so I went underneath using a very small socket set, a 7mm socket set from underneath, and just fixed it on 2 of the 3 screws. But actually, that is, for this size extinguisher, this is it's steady enough, I would say. It will support it well enough. The only thing I've got to do now is the cutout that I made here. I should have measured it really before I did it. Doesn't allow the extinguisher to sit correctly, because it bangs up against the seat adjuster. So it's always worth measuring twice and cutting once. But in this instance, it doesn't really matter, because I can just make that hole a bit bigger and move it along. Okay, so that is the bracket on. I had to modify it again in order to give the seat adjuster some space. Obviously not much, but yeah, that fits on there nicely now. So the extinguisher is installed, and I'm quite pleased with that, actually, because it's solid on there despite not having that 3rd bolt at the top, which, as I say, you have to take the seat base off to get to. But it's pretty unobtrusive. In fact, it's very unobtrusive. And I guess, you know, you can turn it down to make it even less so nobody catches their legs on this part. But yeah, I can recommend that to anybody. I mean, obviously it's not a very big extinguisher, it's not going to put out much of a fire, but it's certainly better than nothing. And the next one up would have sat about here, which I think at that point, yeah, it gets in the way a bit. So so this is, I can't quite remember how big this is. It's 1 kilogram of powder, so that's a 1 kilogram extinguisher, and that's how it looks when it's installed. And it was a very cost-effective solution. This was about £20, 15 to £20, and the bracket I checked last night from Porsche, it was also £20, and then a few pounds extra, a few euros or pounds extra for the nuts and bolts. And what did I want to say? Oh yes, so there is a left-hand drive and right-hand drive version of this bracket. This is obviously a right-hand drive car, so I've got the they call it RL and LL. So RL stands for Rechtslenker, right-hand drive, and LL stands for Linkslenker, left-hand drive. So in the UK it's going to be RL, and in the US and in Europe, mainland Europe, it's going to be LL, Linkslenker, left-hand drive.